is Adriane Curtis. I am pastor serving over at Cambridge City First United Methodist Church in Cambridge City. And so I had something that I wanted to share with you. Not very long ago, I was sitting in my living room. I was reading, and my youngest daughter, who's 4 years old, Evangeline, runs into the room. And she's dragging behind her big art pad that we had just given her, and very excited. And so then she proceeds to pull out these papers to show me her wonderful works of art. And I have them, yes, if you can't see. Yes. That was sort of my response. Oh. Any guesses what it is?
Box.
Very good guess, whoever said box.
So true.
Well, I've learned you don't ask a child, what is that? You say, honey, tell me about your picture. So Evangeline said to me, it's a refrigerator. A refrigerator. Oh, of course. Why would you want to draw a refrigerator? I don't know. But she then proceeds to show me her pad of paper. She has filled the entire pad with pictures of refrigerators. Page after page of refrigerators. Like this is the most normal thing any person would do. And in case you're wondering, I did hang the picture of the refrigerator on our It never occurred to me to think about our refrigerator as a work of art. And yet to my daughter, something about it inspired something in her. I don't know what it was, but to her she saw something different. Christine Wolters-Paintner has this book that I'm reading right now where she talks about creativity and spirituality. And she says in that book that ultimately our greatest creative act is living our daily lives. That our creativity comes out in the ways that we live our lives, our ordinary, everyday, even mundane things are where we express our creativity. Creativity requires having the imagination to see the beauty in even the most ordinary of things. Isaiah, I think, is a really great example of that, because if you look at Isaiah, and the second part of Isaiah, we find the Israelites in exile. So they're living in Babylon, and they have been away from their homeland for so long that generations of children had been born there who didn't even know what it looked like back there. They had never seen it. They didn't understand firsthand what those stories and memories were about. And what is more, the Israelites had this idea that God was tied to their land, that the altars and temples that they had there, all of those, they felt connected them to God. So how do you worship a God without your altars and your temples? Without your land that you depend on for that memory? What is more, they had seen some really tough times. Being in exile, it was not easy. And so, they're faced with this dilemma. What do? Do we fight desperately for our heritage and hold on to what we have? Or do we give in and adapt and settle into this new world and try to make a new home? And here in Isaiah chapter 48, we hear a third way that God brings to them. It says, "From this time forward, I make you hear new things, hidden things that you have not known." Out of the tough times, lo and behold, God is going to bring about something completely new. Lo and behold, God is there with them, even in that tough place. Isaiah reinforces this message over and over. that they are still his people. And so, how does a faithful God respond to their pain? Well, God doesn't bring back the glory days. He doesn't reach back and make things exactly the way they were. No, out of their struggle, God creates something entirely brand new. Same faithful God, but an ever new, creatively hewn world. God appeals to the Israelites' imagination for that world that is in their future. He does that to cultivate hope so that they'll hold on, so that they'll keep going and waiting for those days. Elsewhere in Isaiah, the Israelites are given visions or promises of the future. Why were these words of hope so important? Well, because they helped the Israelites hold on, even in the midst of those times when they couldn't see God working around them. That imagination gave them hope. Now, I think in some ways imagination has gotten kind of a bad rap. When I think of imagination, I think back to Sesame Street. Now, surely that's not like dating me too much. You guys all watch Sesame Street, right? Well, you know, I think about imaginary friends, blue trees, striped flowers, impossible things. And yet God calls us to imagine a better world. A world where God's kingdom reigns, a future that is not only possible, but it's promised to us. Our imagination of a better world gives us hope in the midst of ugliness, in the midst of hard and difficult times. We can't always see or feel God around us, especially in the midst of writing papers, in the midst of trying to get things done, in our mundane tasks of life, like going to the B&B and paying our bills and walking up and down the stairs, getting to and from class. It's not always so easy to see God around us. And yet, if God can bring hope and beauty into the lives of the Israelites in Babylon, then think what God can do in our lives also. In the midst of ugliness, God brings us a vision of something better. If we're going to work towards making God's kingdom here on earth a reality, then we have to be able to envision that world. Can you imagine a world without hunger? Can you imagine a world without discrimination or racism? Can you picture it? It can be hard to hold on to that hope and that imagination when we are so often disappointed, right? We hit the reality of the world, which is that things are not perfect. Things don't often work out the way we hope. There was a couple years ago, my husband and I, Sean, we took our 3 kids on a vacation to the Outer Banks in North Carolina. And so we don't take many big vacations. This is a big deal for us. So we camped in tents at state parks all the way as we drove to the Outer Banks. And so at Virginia Beach at First Landing State Park, we camped our second night, and it was so beautiful. There was no sign of rain, so we left the rain fly off of our tent because we thought, oh, this is going to be great. We're gonna sleep out under the stars, fall asleep with those stars above us and smelling the ocean air. The ocean was just over on the other side of the campsite. And we settle in and fall asleep, peaceful and content, which is something for my children. And we wake up in the morning, and the sun is rising, and Sean and I start to stir and sit up and stretch, and we hear this noise. It's kind of like this clamor, like a bunch of stuff moving, and then it sounds like a sudden downpour, like it's raining, but it's not raining. No, it was the birds that were roosted all around our tent. they got startled, and as they flew off, they left us a whole bunch of birdie presents that they rained all over our tent, and all of us unsuspecting people inside. The only person who came out anywhere ahead, and you can see that was when Evangeline was a baby, and she was wearing a hoodie, so she took her hoodie off. All the rest of us got covered in bird stuff. It was not very pleasant. My story is not so different from many others in that reality a lot of times does not measure up to our dreams and our expectations. Creation is messy. The Israelites dreamed of a better future, and yet we know from later scriptures that it was not all sunshine and lollipops. I mean, they struggled. They had hard times ahead of them. God did bring some amazing things. And Jesus came into this world and did some even more surprising and amazing things in this world. And yet all along the way, there was struggle and messiness. Creation is messy. When we listen to these beautiful psalms, by the streams, the birds of the air have their habitation. They sing among the branches. From your lofty abode, you water the mountains. The earth is satisfied with the fruit of your work. The psalmist conveniently leaves out the mosquitoes that are probably breeding in that water. He leaves out the word of warning that you probably don't want to stand underneath those branches or set up tent because birds, they're a little bit unpredictable. We realize that struggle and failure are part of our world. They're part of creation. And if it weren't that way, then we wouldn't need God as much as we do. Now, knowing that doesn't mean that we should just give up, that we should stop trying. This week, I turned in a completed draft of my master's thesis. I'm taking classes over at Methodist Theological School of Ohio. And as I was finishing it up, I reached a point where in those final segments, I realized that this paper is not going to be as good as I hoped it would be. It's not going to live up to my dreams or my imagination. And part of me really did not want to finish it. I would have been much happier just to live in that dream and have an incomplete paper than to have to deal with the reality that it wasn't the way I wanted it to be, that it wasn't perfect. Moving past that, what helped me was thinking back to ASP. So I was a graduate here in 2000. I went to ASP probably in 1998. And yeah, that's a picture of me, if you can figure out which one I am. And so it rained the entire week, and it was cold. Because it's, January? It was freezing. And we did underpinning for that trailer there, and we also built that little porch that we're standing on in the picture. And Nathan Walby, who that was one of the members of my team, were wearing those rain poncho-y things. We had to climb underneath the trailer in the mud to put the insulation in the trailer. To talk about it, it probably sounds really awful. And there were parts of it that were maybe just a little bit miserable. And yet, it was this amazing adventure. I learned how to use a rotary saw, which was awesome. I got to know the family we were working with, and they're kind of interspersed in that picture on the bottom. And they would tell us stories of their lives and growing up there. And at the end of the week, I was a little bit amazed at the new creation that we had seen born there. In the midst of the mud and the rain, we had brought warmth to that family. And they had warmed our hearts as we got to know them, as we had heard their stories and learned about them. It wasn't perfect, but it was still pretty darn good. Life truly is a creative act. Imagination for something better pushes us to work for that kingdom of God, to work for something better in this world. And that imagination and hope propelled the Israelites forward for years and years and generations until they finally started to see some of those signs of hope. Creation is messy, and that's reflected in our messy, imperfect lives. And yet with God in our lives, we can hope for beauty out of the ugliness. The ordinary can become extraordinary. Even a refrigerator or a trailer in the middle of West Virginia can convey the amazing power of God working in our world. So, as I close today, you all should have gotten a piece of paper. If you want to go ahead and get those out, and you should have gotten a marker too. So this is your opportunity to draw your own refrigerator. Well, okay, not literally, although some of you might choose to draw a refrigerator. I don't know, maybe. But I want you to think about some place in your life, maybe a mundane, ordinary place where you have trouble imagining God. And you're going to draw a picture and make it beautiful, make it a work of art, to remind us that God truly does work in all of those moments of our lives, even when we can't see God there. And I hear that all of you love silence. So we'll take a few moments to silently reflect as you do that, and then I'll close us in prayer before we have